Keep your urban running adventures going all winter long with high-performance traction designed specifically for icy roads. The Catula Nano Spikes footwear traction have a low-profile design that won't affect your stride while running. The 10 ultra-tough tungsten carbide spikes give you traction that you can trust. Don't let the ice and snow stop you from reaching your goals. For more information, visit catula.com.
Hey everybody, my name is Jason Bahamundi and I am the founder and one of the co-owners of Run, Try, Bike, and thank you for joining us today. We have a very special guest, Adina O'Neill of Team Be Real. We cannot wait to have her on the fireside chat to talk to us about herself, her business, what she sees in the endurance sports space and how she's carving out a niche for herself. So we'll have her on here in a second. We'll get Om on here in a moment as well. In the meantime, while I'm inviting them on, please, if you have questions for Adina, hit the little question mark button on the bottom right or type in a comment. We'll be sure to get that question asked and answered by Adina. So without further ado, let me get Om and Adina on here. While we're waiting for them to join us, don't forget consistently with brand new stories and brand new tips and tricks from athletes telling their stories about how they've overcome different obstacles. While you're there, go to the newsletter at the bottom of the screen, or when it pops up, and subscribe to our newsletter. You'll have first access to our digital magazine, which drops exclusively through our newsletter first to our subscribers before it goes out to the public. So make sure you subscribe to that. Check us out on all of the social media platforms besides Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and our podcast, which this will also be on our podcast on Monday, thanks to the great work of Om, who is been leading the charge on getting our podcast done. So thank you, Om, for doing what you do to get that podcast out.
Thank you. And we just got I just got a hi from Melody and Jacob Bateman down there. Also, I just, while we're waiting for Adina, I wanted to try something out to get everyone hooked. What's up? I'm gonna hit Adina with this. She saw it. you gotta ask her a question. What?
I didn't know what that was gonna be. Oh my goodness.
You gotta ask people questions with that effects at some point and just see how they react.
Oh my goodness. Great. Yeah, we're trying to get her on here now. I just resent the invitation to her. Oh my goodness. That was amazing. By the way, Melody and Jacob, thanks for being on here. Check out their podcast, Elder 100. It's fantastic. Perfect timing, Adina. We were just talking about it in a positive light.
That's the only kind.
So first off, before we get into anything, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time out. I know you're on the East Coast, so for me, it'd be pretty close to bedtime. So appreciate you, hanging out until we can have this conversation.
Oh, totally my pleasure. Totally my pleasure. Glad to be here.
So, I didn't give the audience much introduction about who you are. I wanted them to hear it from you. So give our audience, our followers, and our listeners, the brief story of Adina O'Neill, who she is and what she does in the endurance sports space.
All right. Well, I'll try to be brief. I will say that is not my strong suit. I have the gift of gab. I definitely inherited that from my dad, but it comes in handy. So we'll go with it, right? So so I'm Adina O'Neill. I have been an active athlete of some sorts my entire life, although I never kind of realized it. I joined a swim team when I was 5 years old, because where I grew up in the middle of nowhere, there was nothing else to do but go swim in the lake. And I dabbled in all kinds of sports. I played field hockey, I played rugby, and I, swam kind of forever. And then I stopped swimming, had a couple of kids, definitely a good time of my life. But, when you have children, it kind of puts a damper in your training schedule, unless you are one of these like Chelsea Sodaro, who like just won the Ironman, and she's got a toddler, which is totally impressive.
Yeah.
But for ordinary average people like myself, you have kids, it puts a little damper in the training schedule, and just I had to kind of switch gears and find something different for myself. I love to dance, so I, did Zumba for a long time. I was a Zumba instructor, and then one of my friends.
I didn't know that. That's
yes,
cool.
Yes. One of my friends who I met through Zumba says to me one day, "Hey, come do a 5K with me." And I said, "I don't run." She goes, "Well, I walk most of it." I said, "Oh, that sounds like fun." So the competitive side of me said, well, if I'm going to a running race, I should at least make an attempt. So I called up my brother, two brothers, but my brother Mike is an endurance athlete. He's been doing triathlons for like 25 years now. And I called him up. I was like, so what do I do? Like, if I actually want to run? And he gave me some tips and said, oh, try these different things. I said, okay. So I showed up my first 5K. I ran some, I walked some, I ran some, I walked some, 32 minutes. I was like, that was respectable for me. And then I like caught that little bug. I was like, I wonder if I could like break 30 minutes, like it didn't take long to like rope me in. Because I had never been a runner. So I was like, this was all new and exciting. The fact that I even ran a 5K was like, what? So little by little, we did some more 5Ks. Just like, come do a 10K. And I'm like, I didn't want to run for a half an hour. Why do I want to run for an hour? And so then, and it was like, but there's this one that the finish line is at Gillette Stadium. So like, why wouldn't you want to do that? So then that happened. And then,
Giants fan, not a Patriots fan. That's why you would want to do that.
Well, we're in my house, we were not Giants fans either, because my dad grew up in Chicago. So we were Blackhawks fans. But even still, like, crossing the 50-yard line in any like football stadium, pretty cool. So, then that turned into, a half marathon. And I was like, yeah, that's enough running for me. And that's by that time, my kids had actually done triathlons.
Okay.
So like 7 and 9 years old, and they had done a triathlon. So I was like, oh, you'd be cool like Uncle Mike. And sure enough, by the time I started running, they said, well, you don't have any excuse anymore. You know how to swim, you can bike. Your excuse was always you don't like to run. So like, with all this running you've done, you have to do a triathlon now. So I could not argue with that kind of logic. So I went out, bought a bike, and did my first triathlon right around my 40th birthday. And was totally hooked just by like the atmosphere, the people, the excitement, the fact that I had no clue what I was doing. But it was great. It was everything about it was just like, there's more things to do, more things to learn, and then I was like, my brother was in the background saying, well, then you can do an Olympic. And then he's like, let me know when you want to do an Ironman. I was like, I'm not doing an Ironman. That's crazy, dog. And then 5 years later, I did an Ironman. So, it was, very, one of those, I was very easily persuaded to try anything. At the time I had, everything was new and exciting. And I had lost a bunch of weight. So I was like, wow, I was like, I can actually do this stuff. So it just everything opened up all at once. And then after I did the Ironman, by that time, everyone's like, oh, you're such an inspiration. And I have to tell you, like, that was the weirdest thing that people said to me. Like, I didn't get it, because I was like, I'm just a regular person. I'm just out there, like, trying stuff. I'm not fast. I'm not skinny. I'm not, like, the best athlete out there. I was like, I don't know. I'm just like a regular person, but showing up.
But that's why you are an inspiration, because you are a quote unquote regular person, right? You're a mom, you're a wife, you're now a business owner, maybe you were working in corporate America or something. Like, that's who the vast majority of us are. We are the everyday Joe and Jane that are out there doing all of these things, and carve out time to go and train and race and explore our boundaries. One of the things I loved about that introduction was I was easily influenced to go try stuff, right? That means you don't have a fear of failing, right? If people are like, hey, come try this, you're like, yeah, what's the worst that could happen, right? And that is phenomenal. So where does that mindset come from?
Oh, my brother and I, my brother Mike and I were explorers from like day one. We just, like I said, there wasn't much to do where we lived. And so, we'd walk down to the creek, to the reservoir, and like that's what we did. We went on these like little hikes and explorations, and we were little adventure buddies. And, it was like whatever we could figure out. And both of us had very, active imaginations. So, we made stuff up. I don't know what we did, we had a blast together. So for me, when he turned around, I was like, oh, do a triathlon, do this, do that. I was like, okay. I was like, the classic story, one of my favorite stories is we were training, when I was training for the Ironman. So a year before the Ironman, I had done my first century ride on my bike. And I was like, well, that was pretty cool. I'm like 100 miles. Like cycling is like the coolest thing because you can just go so many places on your bike. Absolutely. And it's amazing to think that you are making your bike go wherever you're going. Right. So my brother-in-law says, oh, let's ride our bikes down to the Jersey Shore for vacation. And I was like, well, how far is that? I was like, I don't know. He's like, well, it's like 165 miles. But if we go all the way to Cape May, it'll be 200. So I said, okay. So what are we going to do, like 100 one day and 100 the next day? My brother says, yes, no, we're going to do it all in one day. It's like, that's ridiculous. and he says to me, well, if you can ride 100 miles, you can ride 200 miles. And literally I was like, I do not understand that logic, but he hasn't steered me wrong. So if he says it, I guess it's true. And it was, we rode our bikes 200 miles in one day.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And we had a blast. And honestly, it was a lot better than sitting in traffic the entire time. So it's like, let's go.
So before I ask you my next question, I'm going to reintroduce you because we got people joining us. Hi, my name is Jason Bahamundi. I am the founder and one of the co-owners of Run Try Bike, along with Om Gandhi, who is one of our co-owners here. And we're being joined by Adina of Team Be Real, and we're just catching up with each other on, how she got started in sport and everything else. So I love this idea, right? Well, if you can ride 100 miles, you can ride 200 miles. Have you passed that down to your kids and have taught them that, don't worry about it, go for it. Failure is nothing more than an obstacle in the road?
Yeah. My son is not competitive through sports. He likes to do it just for fun, but I did coerce him into training for a 10K for that same race to cross the finish line at Gillette Stadium. And that was a lot of fun that we like trained for it together. I mean, he was in middle school and, he trained with me to do a 10K. But he uses that. He's an engineering student and, you've got a lot to work on through that process. It's a real difficult course of study. And, he just keeps showing up and doing his best and, pushing through. There's plenty of obstacles where that's involved. And my daughter has caught a little bit more of the triathlon bug. She is a senior in high school. And last summer, she actually completed a half iron, 70.3.
Awesome.
So, at just shy of 17 years old. She completed a 7 and let me train her, which was even bigger. The moms and teenage daughters sometimes have, we've got our challenges, but for the most part, we get along well. We're a little too much alike is what happens. But, and she uses that, not only through that, but, she's a musician and there's a lot of disappointment. There's a lot of roadblocks to overcome with that and, applying for college and just living life every day. So, it's very rewarding to see them, use whatever whatever they've learned in any avenue, because I mean, we all know sports is a great teacher for a lot of things. And the lessons you learn through any training program are going to be, they're going to be useful in so many other avenues as well.
Yeah, like I love the idea that you trained your daughter, because we did a piece on Patrice and Julian Culberson at the end of last year. Julian wanted to do a 70.3 with his mom because he saw her undergo some health issues at Kona prior and make sure he'd be able to race with her. But they chose not to have him be coached by her, because he's like, I'm not going to be able to just be a mom or just be a coach. They're going to overlap constantly. So kudos to you for getting through that process and getting your daughter not only just to the starting line, but to the finish line of that event too. That's awesome.
Well, yeah, she came, she says, will you coach me? And my only question, I said, will you listen? And she said, yes. And I said, then yes, I will. And yeah, it's a different thing. It's like, I think she recognizes that I literally know more about triathlon than she does. Yeah. And so she was willing to give me that. And she knows more about music than I do, and it's normal teenage development. Before I was a business owner, I taught second grade for 10 years. So, it's normal development for kids to go through that process and, finding their own space in life. So it was a real treat for me. It was an honor, even if I could say it, that she asked me and let me coach her, because that was, this, you do something, you become a coach, and if the people you love trust you to help them, that's, in my opinion, that's the biggest, what's the word I'm looking for? Reinforcement, or, the biggest, that's the word I'm looking for. Compliment. That's the word. Yeah. It's the biggest compliment that I could get, that, the people who I care the most about trust me to help them.
So before we go on, I forgot to mention for the audience members, if you have a question for Adina, please type it either in the comment or the little question mark box down there. We'll make sure we'll get it over to her so that we can address the question. One of the things I'd love for you, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I actually had a follow-up question on that, since we were talking about your kids and also the lessons you can learn from sports. What do you think is the biggest lesson that your kids have learned from doing triathlon and sports?
The biggest lesson that they learned, wow, it's hard to pick one lesson. Texting me, and I don't know if you can hear the acknowledgement or whatever, the ringtone. So the biggest lesson that they've learned, I mean, I guess there are so many lessons. The one that comes top of my mind is just, to try something new, and have fun doing it. My son did his first triathlon with a smile on his face the entire time. And I think, he took it away. He did something that was important to me. I think he did it because it was important to me, and he tried it, and he did it his own way, and he literally, I was watching him in transition. I'm like, tie your shoes faster. I understood it. And he's just like, I'm having a good time. Maybe that's the lesson that I learned. But he did it his own way. He was out there and he had a blast. He smiled the whole time, and he did not rush through it. And for my daughter, I think it's I mean, it was already part of her makeup, but just you can just dedicate yourself to anything and you can do it. And it's kind of fun to just do something that other people haven't done.
That's awesome. And I think the lesson there is do it your way, and don't worry about what somebody else is going to think or say or do, because they're not on your journey, they're not on your path. And when you finish a triathlon or you know, score the first seat in a recital, right? Like that's for you to enjoy and be proud, and whatever other people think or say, you can't worry about. I want to switch um, a little bit here in the question. So we've talked about you personally and your family here. Tell us more about how you as a person were impacted enough by the sport of triathlon to launch Be Real, because I've heard the story. I think it's phenomenal. You and I have exchanged emails. There's a ton of parallels between our lives and why Team Be Real exists today and why Run Try Bike exists today.
Yeah, well, it's you know, we touched on a little bit before that whole idea that people started saying, "Oh, you inspire me," and it was a weird thing to hear because I didn't think of it that way. I was just like, well, I'm just out like trying stuff, being a regular person. And the more I heard people say that I inspired them and actually saw what I inspired them to do, because sometimes people are like, oh, you're such an inspiration. Well, you're only really inspired if you then go out and do something, right? So, so, you know, so I said, all right, well, this is great. You know, they think I'm inspiring. I was like, well, that's great. So I started to invite people. I'm like, oh, well, come do this with me. And they listened and they did. I was doing some health and fitness coaching with a multi-level marketing firm, and people started telling me, well, I want to work with you. I like you, but I don't want to be involved with that. And that's kind of when, you know, the light bulb went on and said, well, maybe people would like work with me if I had my own business. And little by little, I took some course and, you know, learned about how to kind of start my own business. Totally had no idea that this was what I was going to do. I had left my teaching job because it was not a comfortable situation for me, and had a very supportive husband who said, hey, well, if you believe in this, give it a shot. And so one day on a long swim, I
what, 8 or 10 miles for you?
No, all right. It was a shorter swim than that, but you know, it was like a 2-mile swim. You know, a longish swim. At that time, it was a long swim. Yeah, but I was swimming around, and swimming is the one place that really clears my mind. It's like the closest thing that I get to meditation. And sometimes I think about absolutely nothing. But on this particular swim, I concocted the entire idea for this team, Team Be Real. And, you know, it all stems from, I mean, the real is about being real, but it actually stands for a realistic, empowered, attainable lifestyle. So, and the B is for badass, because anything that you do to further your own goals is badass, in my opinion. So, you know, along this swim, I had this idea, and it was just, you know, it was for all the, you know, I like to say when I was in high school, I was the short, fat, smart kid in the band. Nobody likes any of those things in high school. And that's just, you know, how it is. And you can let it bring you down. You can let it break you. Or you know, 30 years later, figured out that like it was kind of my superpower. Like I survived all that. I am who I am because of all that. And I learned how to be myself and be real without worrying about what other people said and thought. Like I didn't have a choice at the time. I certainly didn't understand that at the time. At the time, I was like, high school sucks. And I'm one of the very few people who would never go back. Like, you'd have to pay me a lot of money to go back to high school. It was not a nice time in my life. I mean, there were a lot of great things happen, but I wouldn't go back. And like from that perspective, I just, you know, I didn't have the group. You know, I wasn't the popular kid, and there was just always kind of something missing. Like I wanted to be involved in something, and I was friendly with everybody. I mean, I am who I am, but I never had that like group. And so, you know, on this swim, I said, oh, well, I could make a team, and, you know, I could have like, you know, Motivation Monday and Training Tip Tuesday and Workout Wednesday. And I like had the whole concept came to me, and I like rushed out of the water and grabbed my phone and talked as fast as I could into the phone so I could keep all the ideas that were coming out of my head. And it was just, and that was the start of it. I reached out to some of my close friends who were triathletes, or at the time it was mostly triathletes. And, you know, I said, hey, I'm thinking about, you know, starting this team. Will you guys, you know, kind of be the founders and help me get the word out? And some of those women are still on the team. And others have just been, you know, other triathletes who I've connected with over the years. Like I saw Cammie was on here watching. She has been a super support. She's not on the team because she's on like 3 other teams. And she's like, I just don't have the capacity to be on another team. But she supported me along the way in so many other ways. And so, you know, having that support, like I kind of found my community. I found my place. And, you know, little by little, I realized that, yeah, like there are other people like me, you know, so like all the short, fat, smart kids in the band are like, yes, let's go be on Team Be Real because we're accepted, you know, it doesn't matter. None of those things matter. And it's just a matter of getting out there and doing what you want to do for you and celebrating you and what you can do. You know, and the best thing about that is it doesn't matter where you are in your life, like ups and downs, and you can change your goals. You know, no one's mad at you if you don't do an Ironman. No one's mad at you if you're not on the podium. You know, there's none of that. And I hear in the triathlon community, like I've heard athletes say that like they don't feel accepted on teams because they're not fast. Right. They don't feel accepted on teams because they're not on a podium because they're not trying to do an Ironman. You know, or they applied to a team and they didn't get on. Like, like who? Like again, like that's high school. Like who wants to not be picked for the team? Like you're not good enough. Everybody's good enough to be on a team. So I actually was just thinking about that today. Like, why did I call it a team and not like a club? And I didn't realize it at the time, but I'm so glad I did because there's a lot of people that like, oh, I never could have been on a team. Right. Well, yeah, now you can. So everybody deserves to be on the team and have that, you know, have the jersey, have the visor, you know, the whole thing.
For everybody who is out there watching this or listening to this, if you all remember, around Christmas time, there's always the Christmas show where they round up all the toys and they put them on the island of misfit toys. Well, welcome to our team and welcome to our, because you belong here with, because we're not winning races, we're not getting on podiums, we're not doing any of that stuff. We're literally just being ourselves and using endurance sports as a conduit to better our lives. And you're welcome to join us and be a part of all of this because that's what it's all about. Now, I want to pivot again because you mentioned swimming, and I am fully enamored with the idea of the swimming that you do. I never say never, but I'm pretty close to never, ever going to even consider this, let alone doing, right? The crazy people are calling you crazy, just so you know.
Yeah.
You know,
but there are people crazier than me, just for the record. Just saying.
I don't want to know them then. So talk to us about this swimming, not only just swimming 10 miles, but then you're going to be doing this ice swim, I think you called it. Like, what are these things so that the audience knows, and then why, right? Big question, why?
So like I said, I've been a swimmer my whole life. You know, I was on a swim team at age 5. I hauled my entire family out to be on a winter swim team. And, you know, then they all got fast and I didn't. And I was like, swimming sucks. And I stopped. But I was the one who wanted to just go down to the lake and just swim. I would like swim back and forth between the docks. Yeah, I was like 7 or 8 years old. And I'd go down and like do like just 500 for fun, you know, which was weird for that age. But I just felt like I could go forever. And I think if I knew that endurance swimming and marathon open water swimming was a thing when I was younger, like I may have gotten sucked into it then, but I didn't. The pandemic hit, pools were closed. I wanted to get in the water. And of course, there were no races, so I didn't have to run. I didn't have to fit cycling and running into my schedule. So I started doing a lot of open water swimming and met a group of people around here. There's a big open water community in Boston, and there are some really experienced and accomplished marathon and cold water swimmers here in the area. I started hanging out with them, and it didn't take much to convince me to, swim a little farther. After doing an Ironman, which is 2.4 mile swim, I had in my head, I was like, I want to do a 5K swim. I was like, how cool would it be to swim a 5K versus run a 5K? So that was like one of the first things I showed up to swim. They're like, oh, we're doing 2 loops around this swim area. It'll be about a 5K. I'm like, I'm in. Totally undertrained. My arms are killing me the next day. And they're all talking about they're going to do a 10K swim. And I was like, can I do that? And I'm like calculating in my head. I was like, okay, no, my arms literally fall off to do it in their time frame. So I decided I'm going to do it in my own time frame. And I set myself a training schedule, and I found a couple of people to say, will you be there on the day to swim with me? Because number one rule, you got to swim with people. And so I did a virtual 10K swim on my own, unsupported, except for my buoy with my snacks in the bag, that's half the fun. Like I'm so easily entertained. Like when they told me that I could like put snacks in my buoy and carry it with me, I was like, this is so fun. Like, why wouldn't you do that? So that was my first 10K swim, but it wasn't an official marathon swim because I wore a wetsuit. I had a sleeveless wetsuit. So then as we got through, that was September, got October, we're still swimming. November, we're still swimming. I was like, wow, what if we like swim in December? What if we swim, oh, there's that, that polar plunge. Let's go swim with them, And that was the thing I said. I was like, I will never do that. I was like, those people are crazy. Why are they swimming? I love to swim, but why are they swimming in January with no wetsuit, all those things? So, of course, I showed up in January, and I was like, but everyone's doing it without their wetsuit, so I'm going to try it. So then we said, oh, that, it was a thing. It's just like, I didn't think I could swim in November or December, but I did. So it's like, well, try it. They're doing it. Maybe I can do it. So I watched, I listened, I followed the people and followed the advice. We swam for like 5 minutes. We had gloves and booties and thermal caps on. And then we said, well, you gotta swim in January, you gotta swim in February and March, and then we swam all year round.
Amazing.
I was like, well, that would be a cool thing. Like, how many people do I know who have done that? Like, not that many. Like, why not?
It's because they're sane.
and then so then the second year I did a 10K swim without my wetsuit. I wanted to do and it still in my mind, it wasn't an official marathon swim because it was just me in my swimming, a 10K. It wasn't like ratified or anything, part of an event. In my mind, I was still a marathon swimmer, but that's, I also like the stats and I like to follow the rules. So then I swam through that year and swam through the winter. And I said, well, this time I was like, I want to do a big swim. I was turning 50. I was like, I'm going to do something big for my 50th birthday. And I thought about doing another Ironman. It just didn't excite me because I had already done that. And so I said, let's go do a 10-mile swim. I haven't done that. So 10-mile swim, signed up for it and said, all right, well, then the idea of swimming in the cold was a means to an end. So I said, I swam that winter. Well, first of all, I'm going to be honest, I stopped wearing my wetsuit because it didn't fit anymore. And I was like, it was more effort than it was to put the wetsuit on. So I was like, all right, well, there's that. And the more I can acclimate to the cold, the sooner I can do my long swims outside. That was my ultimate goal. I didn't want to do long swims in the pool because as much as I love to swim, long swims in the pool is not my thing. So by April, we were doing, I was doing 2-3 mile swims outside without my wetsuit. So that way I was ready to build up those longer distances to do the 10-mile swim. And then, so this year I haven't even put on the gloves and booties because we signed up to do the winter swim that you mentioned earlier, which is happening actually this weekend. We're heading up to Vermont, in the same lake that I did the 10-mile swim, Lake Memphremagog. It starts in Vermont and it spans into Quebec, Canada. And it's this ginormous lake. And they cut out 2 25-meter lanes in the ice, and we're gonna have a little swim meet.
Yeah, the only thing that would be getting cut out is me. I'm cutting out. Bye.
Believe me, there are days that I'm like, I'm questioning my life choices on this one.
I live in Arizona, and I swam here in December, and the water was like 56, 55 degrees. I lasted 15 minutes. I'm like, this is brutal.
But it's relative. It's relative. The water, the ocean here barely gets to 70 in the summer.
Okay. Yeah.
So we're always swimming in the cold water. Then there are people who wear their wetsuits all summer long because, you know, if you're not used to it, like it's cold. I used to wear my wetsuit all summer long. I wore a full wetsuit the summer I trained for the triathlon. But, you know, that 60, I'm like 55 is a regular. I mean, we can get 55 in like June.
Who is this McFunt? Like 56 is bath water? No, it's not.
Oh, I don't know, but I need to be friends with them.
That is cold, people. Get out of here.
That is some bath water.
56 is, I did a 10K swim at 58, 59.
Who are you people? This person.
That's what we've got, you know.
The planner said, Adina, I live in Ontario and can't swim in less than 60 degrees.
Yeah. Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
There was a question from Trails to 100 from Melody and Jacob. Did you see that?
Yeah. So the question they have for you is, how do you stay hydrated and deal with nutrition on your long swims?
So one of two ways. When I'm swimming by myself, I have a buoy. People call it a tow float or swim buoy. And you can get one that has a pouch, a dry bag inside. And I'll usually sometimes I'll put a water bottle like this. I have a friend who has like a collapsible water bottle, which I'm going to invest in. Sometimes I use my little run bottles, like from my fuel belt, because they're smaller. And then I can have like one with water and one with like noon tablets or something like that in it. But I put my snacks right in there. And, you know, then I'll stop and grab a snack as I'm swimming. And on the longer swims, specifically the 10-miler, I had a kayaker. So I would have, my friend was in the kayak. She had all my nutrition. Like, that's the coolest thing that I found is like, when you do the long swim and you have a kayaker, all you really have to do is swim because they're watching their watch. And every 30 minutes, they're like, throw your water bottle at you. Like, here, have something to drink. Oh, it's time for a snack. Have a gel. Or I like to eat fig Newtons, strawberry Newtons when I swim. That's one of them because they're easy to chew, but they have a little more substance to them than just, you know, eating gels for 8 hours.
Have you, so the thing that did get me excited about like long swimming, by the way, probably not ever 10 miles, but I saw an event one time, maybe in the Olympics, they were doing like a marathon swim, and the crew, it's like they had, I'm going to say fish hooks, but it was more like a pole.
Yeah.
That they,
the feet
for people.
Yeah.
Like, that looked cool to me. I was like, okay, I can get behind that. You know, swim a little bit, grab a snack, you know, get back, swim a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the marathon. So anything over a 10K swim or more is considered a marathon swim. So the one in the Olympics is a 10K swim. But yeah, they get the little fees. That I don't have that kind of excitement yet. My kayaker just throws me my water bottle, or, you know, I go swim over, get a gel and a you know, strawberry Newton kind of thing.
So
I got
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Owen.
I was going to say, I got a follow-up question on that, and this may or may not be a sneak peek towards our next issue, but What you dove into it a little bit earlier, but what kind of goes into what is your mindset? What's kind of going through your head when you're doing a swim as lengthy as a marathon swim?
So, I am a big fan of a race plan. I have all my athletes who I work with, I send them a template and I coach them into creating a race plan, because you've got to be prepared for what you're doing. So when I did my marathon swim, I had a race plan, and it was a lot easier than doing like an Ironman race plan because all it was swimming. But I envisioned how much time it would take me, more or less, and how many feeds I would have and how often. I mean, I dabbled with my kayaker, do I want to eat every 30 minutes or every 40 minutes? And, how often do I want solid food versus, hydration or a gel, or a lot of swimmers will, use like liquid hydration or liquid fuel rather. And so I have that all laid out. And part of my race plan for my 10 milers, I've made a list of all the people who had supported me and all the people who were important to me. And so because I had written it down and reread it as I was swimming, I was like, if I got to a point, I was like, oh, let me think of my dad. My dad always said, be happy, be healthy. I feel happy, I feel healthy, I feel terrific. So for like 30 minutes, I was like, I feel happy, I feel healthy, I feel terrific, and that positive mindset makes you feel happy, healthy. I was like, woohoo, then I was in a good mood because I was thinking good things and thinking about my dad. I had a couple of songs. I sing a lot to myself when I swim, and specifically I was trying to remember the word, like Don't Stop Me Now by Queen is one of my all-time favorite hype-up songs. And for some reason, I couldn't remember one of the verses. So for like an hour, I was like, what is the next verse? I just like kept singing it over and over until I found the verse. And then I was like, oh, wow, that was like an hour ago that I started singing that song. And
Oh
sometimes you just
my
lost in
God.
your head. Yeah. Sometimes you think about a lot of things, and sometimes I think about nothing at all. It's the movement of the water and the calmness and the comforting of the water. It just puts me in a place that I can't explain, and it's such a calming effect. Like I haven't stopped talking since we got on the thing, so you can't imagine me being very calm. I can't imagine myself being very calm, but like that's one place that I just like everything slows down. Like it's the only place that I have that like can just like chill out, and there's enough movement, but it's very it's methodical, and it's just stroke, and I don't know, just I'm off in some crazy old world, my own little mind.
Yeah, there's
Go ahead, I'm sorry, Yo.
I was just gonna say there's something to be said about like sometimes the thoughts just being like nothing at all for like hours on end, especially in like those really long events. But before I let Jason go ahead with his thing, I just wanted to say that I'm gonna have to try that out. Just trying to memorize a song like 95% of the way, and then just deliberately try to remember the lyric and see how fast the time flies. That's a pretty good one.
Yeah. I mean, I've sang that song a million times, and I was like, what is the next verse? I was so upset with myself. I was like, ugh.
Yeah, so we've all got different tips and tricks really on how we get through things. So I'm a math guy. Like I love numbers. And so if I know that I can run a 9-minute mile in a particular section, it's 540 seconds, right? So then I start counting backwards, 540, 539, 530. And then I look at my watch, and you're like 7 minutes into the 9 minutes of the mile. And it's a distraction technique more than anything else, right? Just totally pulls you away from whatever you think you might be going through in the moment, and just resets everything. So those are awesome.
Math is the best. People ask me, what do you do for, I was like, I do a lot of math. And they're like, you're weird. I was like,
Tons of math. That's all I'm doing. Constant math.
oh yeah.
You know,
Great.
quick story before we jump into other things. So I raced Lake Sonoma a couple of years ago, and it was a 50 miler. I got to the 37-mile aid station, and it was so hot. It was like 100+ degrees that day. And I sat down and I started doing the math. I got 13 miles. I got this amount of time to finish. That equates to this number of minutes per mile to be able to get to the finish if I walk the whole thing. And at that moment, I was like, I'm walking the whole thing. I'm going to walk the next 13 miles in. Just the idea of running wasn't going to happen. And to the T, I crossed right under 14 hours, which was just enough time to qualify as an official finish. Otherwise, it would have been past the cutoff. But all math, the whole time was math. Okay, I did 15 minutes or whatever, one in 14:20, which means I could do the next one in 15:40 if I'm. You just math the whole way and get to the finish line. That's all there is to it.
That's right. That's right.
I mean, are you a long distance athlete if you haven't done math at least once or twice, especially to calculate just the right pace to get to the finish?
That's it. That's it.
Right. That's right. I know a lot of people that are like, oh, I don't know how you do math. I'm like, I don't know how you don't do math.
I don't do it either. Like, it's just constantly in my head.
Yeah.
So I have one question before we jump into the rapid fire. We're obviously a part of the media. We're obviously endurance athletes, but we hope that our platform is something that we can leverage for good change in the sport. So what do you think that our sports need to do to be better, right, for the community, whether that's pricing or inclusion in some form or fashion? Like, what do you think we can do as athletes in this space, as people who have some influence over different things, to change the sport for the better? And what would the better be in your mind?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things, and luckily there's a lot of people working on a lot of different things. But I have to say the thing that has been the biggest thorn in my side recently has been around gear, like triathlon kits or swimsuits, things like that, and having them be accessible and available to people of all sizes. We did a 4-person 8-mile relay, and we could not find bathing suits to fit all 4 of us because we're 4 different sizes, shapes, and competition bathing suits now, which is racing bathing suits, whatever. It just means a bathing suit you're going to wear in a pool or to swim. They only go up to it. Like, when I look online for bathing suits, like, I wear the largest size generally that's available. Like, sometimes it's a 40 or a 42 for women, and like that's the size that I'll generally wear. There are people who are larger than me who are swimmers. Where are they finding a bathing suit? Where I'm trying to find triathlon kits and gear for my team, and it's the same thing. We've got some larger bodies on our team, and you're looking at some of these sizes, and they're just, like, I followed a sizing guide for something, had a 2XL and could barely zip it. I'm like, well, that's ridiculous. So that's a big barrier right now that I see on a regular basis, and very personally, but also for my team, is just like trying to find, gear that we can wear. And even to one point I saw an ad for a well-known brand, and they said, oh, triathlon gear for everybody. And the only people in their advertisement were tall, skinny, that traditional pinup person, a triathlete, and I actually made a comment. I was like, I beg to differ. Like, I don't see a representation of all kinds of bodies in your advertisement. And someone literally wrote back, well, this is elite gear. And I said, well, what's your point? Because it's just that idea that if you don't look like that, athlete who just won the triathlon, and even like, oh my gosh, like when Christian Blumenfeld won the Ironman, I was like on the live feed, and there were people in the comments saying, well, if he weren't so big, he probably could have gone faster. He just won the Ironman. And people are like putting down his size, like, ah. So, this idea that you have to be a certain size to be an athlete it's so frustrating. But to add to that frustration is that those athletes who are that size, who want to be in those events, can't find the gear they need to participate, is even more frustrating. And I've looked around. I found one place. We're going to give them a shot, based on a recommendation, and I will, we'll see how that goes. And if it goes well, you'll certainly know. I'm not one to make, I'm not going to like call people out on social media. If I get bad service, I'm going to call somebody out.
Right.
But and if I like something, and like if these guys do well by us, you're all going to know who they are. And I'll wait until that happens before I say one way or the other, because I don't know yet. But they came highly recommended. The first conversation I had with them, they're like, oh yeah, we want everybody to have a kit that fits them, and we're going to work with you and make sure that everyone has the size that they need. So, but it was I've been doing this since like December, trying to find, and there was one really big company, and they're working on their Athena sizing of their tri-suits, but then they have minimums. It's like, oh, you have to order so many. It's like, okay, so now you can't be a small team either. Like, so that was kind of rough. So I'm hoping that this is, again, it's a smaller company. Yay, small businesses all supporting each other, and that's the way to go, because we understand. We have not lost sight of the individual athlete. And those bigger companies, they get too big, and sometimes they lose sight of that. And yeah, that's something that has been that's been very close to me, when I think about my team, because I said, I don't want this to be the biggest team around. I want our team is like a family for a reason. And I'll keep inviting people, and I'm not going to turn anybody away. But if it gets too big that it doesn't feel like a family, then I have to rethink how to make it feel like a family, and what to do that, because that's the secret sauce for me. It's not this big. I'm not here just to to throw numbers out and say, oh, I have the most people. That's not what it's about. Like, I know all the people on my team.
Well, we look forward to getting the feedback from this new company. Hopefully it works out for you guys. Just a quick shout out to Fitness Addiction Planners and AK Ultra Run One. Thank you for your comments about what Adina was just speaking about, because it is something that needs to be addressed in our endurance sports world. Again, this is the Island of Misfit Toys. We want you all to be here with us. We don't care how fast or how slow, how big or how small you are, how young, old you are. We just want you doing endurance sports with us. So, are you ready for our rapid fire?
Well, let's do it. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little nervous.
Good. You haven't. There you go. That'll loosen you up.
Oh, yeah.
So, when you're out running, and I do a lot of swimming, you sing songs in your head, but when you're out running, are you listening to music, a podcast, or nothing at all?
Oh, music and singing very loudly.
Perfect. Do you enjoy, are you a TV entertainment, movie entertainment, or book entertainment?
TV, not movies, because I fall asleep. And if I read a book, I listen to it on audio.
Yeah. So your favorite TV show of all time is?
Oh, favorite TV show of all time. Probably Seinfeld.
Yes. That's definitely an age group thing for us, for sure.
No soup for you.
That's right.
That's right.
And if you had to let the audience know a book that they must read, what would it be, or must listen to, for that matter?
Oh, a book. I'll do the one that I read recently. Was called Endure, and I can't remember the author's name, But it was all about it was looking to compare the physical act of endurance versus the mental act of endurance. And I won't spoil you to tell you which one is more important.
That's if the author has the same thoughts that a buddy of mine, Goat, Jeff Folks, rest his soul, and I used to talk about always during training rides, was the hardest muscle to train is the one that lies 6 inches between your ears. And that muscle, you can do just about anything.
Yeah, indeed.
All right, so we'll now go dive into the food section of the rapid fire questions. You're out in New England, so pizza is big out there in the area. Are you putting pineapple on pizza? Is that a thumbs up or a thumbs down?
All right, first of all, no pineapple. But second of all, New England knows nothing about pizza. I'm from New Jersey.
Wait, but Connecticut has great pizza.
No. Disagree. Disagree. No, I am a New York style pizza. I worked at a pizza place when I was in high school. Tony's on Route 23 in Stockholm. Go there. Best pizza ever. Connecticut is all Greek style pizza.
It's the best answer we've had ever because I'm a style guy too, born and raised there. And I don't want to hear anything. Like when people tell me about Chicago, I'm like, I don't want to eat tomato soup out of a bread bowl. Like it just don't bring that crap. Don't want.
Yeah. And for the record, New England doesn't know how to make bagels either.
That's right.
Well, Melody and Jacob, Toyota 100 say they're making pizza right now, and there's no pineapple going on it. But Fitness Addiction Planners is saying Team Pineapple. Team Pineapple.
That's all right. We still love Nancy. She's good people.
So yes, bagels, New York bagels by far. New York cannolis by far. Like there's no comparison, zero comparison whatsoever.
I have to say there are two very good bakeries in the north end of Boston that make a very good cannoli.
Happens to also be the Italian section of Boston.
Exactly.
So
but we'll give them that we've got decent cannolis if you go to the north end. Bagels and pizza we're still working
on. Candy corn. Is that a real candy?
Yeah, candy corn.
All right. Well, all the wonderful camaraderie we just had, just thrown in the garbage.
Oh, that was the best thing I ever. I was ran a half marathon. There was little kids giving out packets of candy corn. I was like, that was the smartest thing ever.
I'd have thrown the kids and the candy corn in the garbage. Get out of here.
Oh yeah. No, if it's pure sugar, I'm all there for it.
So then Peeps.
Peeps. Yeah. Peeps, 100%.
It's just a dust ball with glitter on it. Come on.
It's fun. You bite their head off, and then but you have to wait until they're kind of stale. That's what.
What is happening here? You're like the fifth person who said they love Peeps and that you have to eat them when they're stale.
Well, have you ever tried them stale?
No, why? I don't want to eat them when.
There you go. All right, Jason. Challenge extended. Easter is coming, man. Like you have to try a stale Peep.
So please don't tell me you all like that Cadbury egg that has like the gooey thing in the middle.
Cadbury cream egg. Absolutely. 100%.
I can't, like, just on visual alone, I can't eat that thing. Like, just on visual alone.
Yeah. No, push past it. You can do it. We're going to have a repeat Easter candy extravaganza challenge.
We'll just get guests on to taste test this stuff. It'd be awesome. So you remember back in the day, like, I don't know if maybe your grandparents had them or not, but the orange circus peanuts?
I knew you were going to say that. Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
You know what they use those for now?
I don't know.
To pack your Amazon packages when they ship them to you. Oh, it's a styrofoam.
Yeah. Oh, no. Circus peanuts. Absolutely.
When it comes to red vines or Twizzlers, are you black licorice or red licorice?
Oh, red licorice.
All right.
And the actual Twizzler, I don't like the long, skinny ones. I like the real Twizzlers.
Yeah, so you like Twizzlers, not red vines that you peel apart.
No. And the best is you like eat the top and the bottom, and then use it as a straw in your orange juice.
Yes. So is red velvet a real flavor, or is it just chocolate cake with red dye?
It probably is chocolate cake with red dye and some kind of flavoring, because it doesn't just taste like chocolate cake.
That's right. That's right. But in the grand scheme of things, it's just chocolate cake.
It's a little bit of both. It's a little, because it doesn't taste like chocolate cake.
But don't pay extra. It's chocolate cake. Go enjoy.
Well, but if they put that yummy cream cheese frosting on it, then absolutely pay extra.
That's when you go to carrot cake. If you're going to get the cream cheese frosting, what?
I'm out. I'm out.
Oh, I love carrot cake.
Carrot cake is the win.
Nope.
It's
I'm out.
That's the only place you can put pineapple, as a matter of fact, is in carrot cake.
Okay.
You need the moisture. And raisins. Are you a raisins guy in your carrot cake?
Oh, I don't know if I've ever had raisins in my carrot cake or if I paid attention to that.
Gotta have it. Absolute. Do you eat meat, Adina? Are you a meat eater?
Oh, yeah.
Are you a fan of barbecue then?
Yep.
So are you going North Carolina style, Texas style, St. Louis style?
I guess I'm not that big of a fan of barbecue because I don't know the different styles.
North Carolina is more vinegar based. St. Louis style is more dry rub, and Texas style is more like moppy wet.
Oh, I probably would be the dry rub.
Okay.
And not too spicy.
Gotcha. So we know you're New York pizza, which means Chicago pizza is out. What about Detroit pizza? You giving that a shot?
I don't even know what Detroit pizza is. Like, seriously, like if it's not New York pizza, like even here, there's one place that approximates New York pizza, and there's usually a little bit of a struggle because that's the only place I like to get pizza. But sometimes I do give in and let the other people in my family choose.
Yeah, Detroit style pizza is like a Sicilian slice.
Okay. Sicilian has a spot. Sicilian pizza is okay.
And what they do is they put cheese on the edges so that when it cooks, it creates like a cheesy crust for you.
Oh, I could get into that. Cheesy crust, yeah.
And the best part about it, the Detroit style pizza, is while it's a square, every side has a crust. Because I hate getting middle piece square.
That's Connecticut.
Like it's all over the place. Like, what's the point of this? Like, just.
That's right. Yeah. Although I do have to give a shout out to my mom's pizza because my grandmother was the first. My grandmother's family was Italian. She was the first from her family born in the U.S. So my grandmother, now my mom's homemade pizza recipe is, definitely in the running.
Awesome. Adina, thank you so much for joining us. Had a great time. Really enjoyed getting to know you even more than we already have. Folks, check out our website. We've got magazines have Adina's articles on them. She's got another one coming out for our next issue, so make sure you subscribe to our newsletter. Adina, let people know where they can find you outside of here on Instagram. Where else?
Yes. So I have a website. It's adinao'neill.com, A-D-I-N-A, O'Neill, like the wetsuit company. Like, if that wasn't fate, I don't know what was. So 2 L's. And that's you can find me right there. You can send a message to hello@adinao'neill.com if you want to email me. And everything's on the website.
Awesome. By the way, this episode will be in our feed if you missed any of it right after we're done. Tomorrow, Thursday, the latest, it'll be on our website as well as on our YouTube channel, and the podcast will be out on Monday. And join us next week. We'll have another special guest, Cheryl Miller, not the Hall of Fame basketball player, but a Hall of Fame friend who is a cross-country high school running coach, who is also, shout out to my folks, Puerto Rican. So we'll have a little family get-together next week. Adina, again, thank you so much. We look forward to future and further collaboration with you and Team Be Real.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, guys. It was a blast.
Have a good one.
All right, good night.
Bye-bye.